All right, so section 8.2 in our winter of podcast discontent. I'm like section 8.1 having to split this into two sections. And this one's going to be super short. So we're going to look at the social impact of the Industrial Revolution. How does the Industrial Revolution impact the way that people live their lives? Well, for many, it means move to the city. And we see this process called urbanization, in which people move to where the work is. And when factories are built, they are built along water sources at first because that's how they're powered. So people are going to move to the cities. That's just basically how the job is done because most cities are built along water sources. And you see a huge movement of people, the biggest or largest population transfer in human history. Cities in Britain, especially because Britain, of course, is where the Industrial Revolution starts. You see the British cities grow. Cities like Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham grow up and become large cities. And if you note 50,000 people there at the bottom, to give you a little context, that's about the size of Bowling Green. So before the Industrial Revolution, there were only 3 cities in England or Britain that were probably larger than 50,000 people. It's kind of like the way Kentucky is today, to be fair. And then you give it about 35 years and look at what the numbers are then. So a lot of people are leaving the countryside, they're leaving rural areas, and they're heading for the work, the concentrated areas. And because of that, it creates specific problems for people living in cities. One of those problems is that we got to live with one another, right? I mean, housing as it is developed in these cities is not very well thought. It's very much, we got all these people moved in, where can we create a place for a lot of them to live at and in a quick sense? And that leads to tenement housing, in which extended families, multiple families can live in the same apartment house. And when you live in one space very close with one another, it can create trouble with spreading disease when you are trying to share the same space. So it's something to think about going forward is public health. With all these people living together and living around one another and in close quarters, what's going to happen to our health is going to be an issue. This is an exterior of a tenement house, an apartment house, and I believe New York City, but it's the same process in England, at least even before here. And it can show you kind of the filth that people live in and just the poor conditions that we see. And yes, in our world today, and in our city, in our state, we still see conditions like these, but certainly not to the extent even that we saw in the early 19th century. And with being in such close quarters brings the spread of disease, and that included the spread of what was called cholera. And cholera became such a huge cultural impact that it became known as King Cholera. And it really impacted, if you go back and look at some of the stats of the people in, say, London, so many people were killed, so many people died due to the spread of cholera that it culturally became such a huge thing. Of course, cholera spreads when you got poop in the water. It can be a bad thing. So, well, poop in anything is usually a bad thing if it's not your toilet. So with that little helpful piece of advice, we'll call it a day here for this first section, 8.2. We're going to look at in class a lot more of the conditions that people are living in and certain things like that. But this is just a little introduction to urbanization and living and working conditions.